Hello, everyone. This is Mircala Wozniak. I handle communications for the office. We'll give it another about 60 seconds to let folks get on, and then we'll get started. Okay, why don't we go ahead and get started? I'm going to go ahead and get the clip on screen for a moment to get started, and then we'll get into our presentation. Go ahead, Molly.
All right, you can hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Molly Fitzpatrick. I'm the Boulder County Clerk and Recorder, and want to thank all of you guys for joining us today and Mircala for organizing this. We know that there are lots of questions about how our office processes ballots, especially what activities look like after Election Day. So we wanted to shed some light on what we'll be doing post-Election Day. For us, Election Day is it's one milestone. We are still processing for several days and conducting post-election activities for several weeks before we certify the election at the end of the month. So those are the steps we'll go through. Feel free to throw comments in the chat and we will either answer as we go, and we'll also make sure to leave time at the end for questions. So with that, I will go off camera and we will get started with our agenda.
Okay.
So at a high level, we'll be talking about ballot processing, our schedule for election night results reporting, what we will be doing the 8th and 9th day after the election. The 8th day is the deadline for voters to take care of any issues that might have happened with their envelopes, as well as military and overseas ballots to get back to our office. And then we'll do another scan and upload on 9th day. We'll talk about what ballots will be included in that scan. We'll talk about recounts, and we'll talk about our risk loaning audit and then how to be a watcher. At a high level in Colorado, we are able to start processing ballots 15 days before Election Day. That being said, our office does not generate anything into a report until Election Day. And so that's a really important thing to remember is that although we are processing ballots, we are ensuring that no sort of reports are run until Election Day. At the jump, ballot envelopes are sorted into categories from the start of processing. So once ballots are returned to our office, to our ballot processing center, we will immediately start categorizing them into different categories. Accepted ballot envelopes and then rejected ballot envelopes. There are two types of rejected ballot envelopes. One type is ballot envelopes that a voter can take action to cure and to have their ballot move forward for processing. And then the second type of ballot envelope is rejected ballots that cannot be cured and unfortunately will not be counted. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. Accepted ballot envelopes. So if you return your ballot back to our office, like I said, we immediately start categorizing it. Accepted ballot envelopes are ballots that are moved forward for processing. But first, we do signature verification. So our election judges are looking at the way that you signed your ballot envelope, and they're comparing it to previous signatures that we have on file for you to make a match. If they're able to make a match, then your ballot is moved forward for processing. The other accepted criteria is that there's only one voted ballot in the envelope, that the ballot is for the 2024 election. And yes, we do receive ballots from time to time that have a previous election in them. Those don't count. And then after that, the voter is assigned vote credit. And from that point forward, for accepted ballots, the envelope is securely transported to the second floor of our ballot processing center. And that's when the ballot is removed from its envelope. And that's after that, the ballot is prepared for scanning. And when we prepare it for scanning, we're flattening it because there's been folds on that ballot. We need to be able to run it through our scanning equipment. And we're also looking for anything that could impact the scanning process, such as damaged ballot, ripped, torn, food stains, drink stains, anything like that. And then those ballots are scanned and the votes are captured in the voting system. But like I said, we are running a report on election day. No reports to run before election day. Okay, so the second category with some subcategories are rejected ballot envelopes. And as mentioned, there are some rejected ballot envelopes that voters can cure in order for their vote to count. And so those are envelopes where there might be a missing signature because from time to time, voters do forget to sign their envelope or the signature doesn't match. And so that's when the election judges aren't immediately able to determine that that signature matches that voter. Or if there was a missing ID, sometimes voters have to include a copy of their ID in with their ballot. And so what we will do is we will send that voter a letter saying, hey, we need you to respond to this letter. Let us know that it was you. Include, your ID, and then we'll move your ballot forward for processing. Until that voter returns that letter to us or gets in contact with us, those ballot envelopes are quarantined on the first floor and they are not moved forward for processing. After the election, just as an aside, if voters do not respond to our letter or outreach, we will turn in those names over to the district attorney for investigation. The second category of rejected ballot envelopes are those that we cannot count no matter what the voter does. And so that would be if a voter had more than one voted ballot in the envelope, if it was an empty envelope, or if it was for a previous election. Okay, election night reporting overview. So on election day, we will add a link at the very top of our website that will lead you to our ENR, or election night reporting website. We post after 7 p.m. So it won't be right at 7 p.m. It will be shortly after 7 p.m. for our first post. And then that first post typically reflects mail ballots counted through Monday. After that, the rest of the post will include ballots that are counted and processed on Tuesday or Wednesday, and then in-person ballots as well. So that's another reason why we encourage folks to vote early, because if you vote early, we're able to provide a more comprehensive or complete set of election night results election night results. So after that, result postings continue the next several days until we've processed all of the ballots we can. And so, what I would offer is that this is a sign that the process is working, that we are following our steps accurately, and that we are ensuring accuracy. We do understand that folks want election results quickly. We're also balancing that with making sure that they're processed accurately. And so we'll always prioritize accuracy over speed. And so we will be counting for several days after election day to ensure that each ballot envelope goes through the same exact steps to demonstrate integrity. Here is our results posting schedule at a very high level. We will, like I said, post after 7 p.m. and then we will do another one before 9 a.m. We expect our last posting of the night to be around 1:30, and then we'll be doing end of days on Wednesday and Thursday. And so the reason that we do end of days is because the way that the ballot, there's 6, 7, 8 steps that a mail ballot has to go through before it is tabulated. And so the way that we have our crews working, we need certain crews in before it gets to the scan room. And so that's why we have a later posting schedule for Wednesday and Thursday. And the other reason is that we want to ensure that we are pulling resources as least often as we need to post results, because every time we post a set of results, lots of activities have to stop and be prioritized. So again, it's trying to balance that, giving folks the information while also trying to give them as much information as possible. One of the questions that we get asked the most is how many ballots are left to count, and Mercala has done a phenomenal job over the last several years of making this a more self-service kind of effort for folks. So what you can do is you can go to our website and you can see how many ballots have been received back to our office. And that's what that snapshot is on the upper right hand of this slide. This is updated every day at 7 a.m. And then on election day, we'll be updating this every 3 hours. And on Wednesday and Thursday, we will continue doing this as well. And on, let's see, Tuesday, update showing Tuesday figures through the week following the election when we receive valid ballots from other counties. So this slide basically will represent what's received. It will never match what we actually count, because what we received is always much higher than what we count, because we will, go through that accept and reject process. So, but it gives you a ballpark, and that's what the goal is, to give you a ballpark of what we have received in-house. And so to go to the next slide, what you can do is you can compare this number to our election night results website. Mercala, do you want to go to the next slide? Well, sorry, I thought the next slide was, excuse me, you guys, I thought it was a snapshot of ENR, but on our election night results report, or election night results website, you can see what we've counted. So you would just do the difference, and all that information will be on our website. Okay, so the 8th and the 9th day after the election, we have military and overseas voters have until 8th day after the election for their mail ballot to arrive back to our office. And so that would be if they mail it back to our office. There's also voters, as we mentioned earlier, who turned in their ballots by 7 p.m. on election day, but there's some sort of issue. Maybe it's signature verification or missing ID. They have until 8 days after the election to cure their envelope to have their vote move forward. And so we basically are still processing, still receiving ballots or correspondence from voters to move their ballots forward, and in the military and overseas situation, still receiving ballots. And then we will collect all of that. And then on the 9th day after the election, we will then scan again and do another upload to results reporting. And so this year, ballot processing, that 9th day will be Thursday, November 14th. Okay, there are 2 categories of buckets, or 2 buckets of ballots. We talked about ballots that will definitely be counted, and then ballots that could potentially be counted, and within that, ballots that are, including cured. And so essentially the ultimate number of ballots counted at the end of the 8th day period is typically somewhere in between. So just know that things might shift a little bit, and that is normal, and that means that we are following all of the steps to ensure that we're curing ballots appropriately. Okay, definitely counted ballots. So let's talk about what will absolutely be processed. And so there are, in Boulder County and the state of Colorado, we have a constitutional obligation to protect privacy. And so in order to do that, we do hold back 3 ballots per precinct, per district style, to help preserve the anonymity for voters. And so for this election, we are holding back 690 ballots back in order to preserve anonymity. Those ballots will absolutely be scanned and uploaded on 9th day. Then we have what we call VIPs, and those are voter information protection ballots. And these are ballots that come from voters who live in places where there's a distinct district style that has very, very few voters. And what we'll do is we combine them with other voters in similar scenarios. And so that's going to be around 1,500 this election. And then last, we will have manual process ballots. And these are ballots that typically have been damaged, like maybe they got wet, or they need to, some sort of weather event impacted them, or they're so stained and dirty that we will need to have a manual process on those ballots, meaning they might need to be sorted in a manual way or reviewed in a manual way. So typically around 500 this election. So again, make sure everybody knows that these ballots will absolutely be counted. But what we do in Boulder County is work really hard to ensure that everyone's vote remains anonymous, and to ensure that different reports couldn't be used to tie back to any sort of voter in the way any one person voted. Ballots that could potentially be counted. Again, we talked about ballots for military and overseas voters. Those are ballots that have the potential to be returned by mail and still counted. There's ballots that need to be cured, and so we will still be processing voters who reach back out to our office to say, yes, that was me, or provide a signature, or provide ID if they didn't originally. There's also ballots that were returned to another county clerk's office. So in Colorado, you can return your ballot to any 24-hour ballot drop box in the state, and then counties will work to ensure that it gets to the home county. So as long as it's in a Colorado drop box by 7 p.m., that's permissible, and then we will collect those ballots from other counties in the days after the election. Provisional ballots, very much not as much of a thing as it used to be, because we can issue replacement ballots at vote centers. Typically, this is extremely small, less than really 5 ballots per election, I would say. Okay, recounts. So as election officials, we always want high turnout and wide margins, but we have also been in a scenario the last couple of years where we've been doing a lot of recounts. So we are well experienced and versed on this. And so a recount can be requested, or it could be required if the contest is so close. And so a recount would occur actually after the Canvass board certifies the original vote count. And so our Canvass completion date is Tuesday, November 26th, and then we have to, the state Canvass deadline is the 27th. And so after that date is when we would complete a recount if the margins are so small. But you can also request a notarized request for a recount, a voluntary recount, but that you'd have to pay for that. And so that would need to be filed with our office or the SOS. So we'll know by November 29th if we have to do an automatic recount. Okay, so in a 2-candidate race, here's an example. The candidate A received the amount in purple, candidate B received the amount in green. So the difference between those candidates is 31. And so the winning candidate vote total is at less than or equal to 0.5%. In this case, no automatic recount is required because it's above that threshold. Okay, in a multiple candidate race where the top 5 win, it's essentially the calculation for the recount is between candidate 5 and candidate 6. And this is for the top 5 wins, they're vying for that 5th spot. The difference is 125. And so when you do that math, you look at that difference, and is it less than or equal to 0.5%? And in this case, it is 1.3, so no automatic recount is required. Okay, so one thing is that we will never call or respond to a request to call a race. We will provide everyone with the facts on the number of ballots counted and on what we have counted and what's left to count. Again, we'll recognize and receive cures through the 8th day and do another upload on the 9th day. So after that, we will be certifying our results late in the day, Tuesday, November 26, 2024. Okay, Colorado's risk limiting audit. So this is something that we're very proud of in Colorado. This happens after Election Day, but before we certify the election results. And so this is when we go and pull hand-marked paper ballots and compare them to what's called the cast vote record, which is a record that demonstrates how the voting system looked at your ballot, or sorry, scanned your ballot when it was scanned. And so this is considered a very high quality audit because you're using resources wisely, because you're using statistics to basically tell you how many ballots you need in order to validate election outcomes. So this is something that we'll keep. If you want to go to the next slide, we'll talk a little bit more about that. Okay, so when we're scanning your ballot, there is nothing on your ballot that basically says this is so-and-so's ballot. But at the time of scanning, what we're going to do is we're going to put an imprint on your ballot, and that ballot is going to have, for example, the date, the time, which scanner it was scanned on, and which batch it was. And this is a unique identifier to that particular ballot. After your ballot is scanned and we have that imprint on it, the ballots are then securely stored. The votes are captured for that ballot in our voting system, and a cast vote record is recorded. And again, that's the way that the voting system interpreted your ballot at the time of scanning. After the election, the counties provide the CVR from its voting system to the Secretary of State's office. And again, that shows how the scanner read your ballot at the time of scanning. And then the Secretary's office uses software to randomly select ballots for the counties to audit. So then we'll have election judges go pull paper ballots, and we compare the votes on the ballots to the votes recorded in the cast vote record. And we report those in the audit software, and it tells us if we have made a match. Okay. High level for the RLA is here. I'm not going to read these dates, but what I would offer is that we would love to have you observe the risk limiting audit. I think it's a really great demonstration of why election outcomes can be, how they can be validated and why we can trust them. So please come see for yourself. And then we will also have our Canvas board meeting on November 26th, and that's open to the public as well. So please join us for that. And then we've already talked about the recount deadline, so we'll keep moving. So watchers. Watchers are such an important part of the process. I really believe it's important to have as many eyes on our processes as possible. So please know that we welcome watchers in our environment. We work really hard to make sure that watchers have a great experience when they're here. We have dedicated watcher hosts, because one of the questions that we get from watchers the most is actually like, tell me what I'm actually looking at. Tell me what I'm observing. And so we have watcher hosts who can walk you through these processes so you can better understand it. And so at that point in the process, if you want to be a watcher, you would need to be credentialed by a political party or an issue committee. And so if you get credentialed, you will check in at our main office when you're going to the ballot processing center with these materials, certificate of appointment and oath of watcher, and then the watcher training course, and then just demonstration that you've taken the course. And then after that, we'll assign a watcher host to you. And then if you would prefer just to go to a vote center and not see the ballot processing activities, then you would just go directly to the vote center with your materials and check in with the lead judge. But again, know that we really want you guys to, if you're on here, if you're a candidate, please send somebody to watch. I think it's just good to have awareness on what's going on in the operation, and the more the merrier. Okay, so those are all of the questions, or all of the content that I have so far. Here's some action steps. Follow us on social media. Love to have folks update their voter registration record with an email address, so you can get information about these types of events and more. And please vote early so you can ensure that nothing stands in your way between now and Election Day. Life happens, we get it, so please vote early. So with that being said, I'm happy to dive into questions. And I see that, Mark, you've asked one or maybe two so far about why are there so many UOCAVA this year? So we have, I'm not sure I can, and then you also have a question about why there are more than regular ballots. Without knowing exactly what you're looking at, I can't speak to that, but what I can say is that we've been, we mailed out ballots to UOCAVA voters mid-September, and we've been receiving lots of ballots from UOCAVA voters. We also received lots of folks who came into the office early to request a ballot if they're going to be traveling. So typically we just see higher enthusiasm, higher interest in presidential years. So that would be my offering, is that we're seeing that same trend. And then I see another question, can we receive the Canvas board documents a week in advance because it takes time to review all of that data? Great question, Mark. We have worked for years and years to provide above and beyond information to our Canvas board because we do recognize that it is a lot of information to review. It's also a lot of information to collect and gather and document and to prepare for the Canvas board. So at this point, we're not able to provide it any earlier than we already do, but we are proud that we're able to provide it a couple days in advance to the Canvas board, and that is not a requirement in state law, but I agree that it's important for Canvas board to have some time to review, and we're doing the absolute best we can to provide as much documentation as early as possible, and we'll keep going above and beyond what's required in state law to make sure that Canvas board gets those materials.
We'll give it a minute to see if anyone else drops any questions. Just a couple of reminders. There's still some public tours coming up. So those are on our website under election events. Go ahead and sign up there for any of those public tours. I might try to add one additional slot on Friday afternoon. So if things fill up, that's probably where it will be. Additionally, we have our vote early day events tomorrow. We have 4 events in total. And again, those are on our website, but we have starting tomorrow morning in Longmont, moving midday in Boulder at EFA in Northern Boulder. And then concurrently back in Longmont in the afternoon, as well as at Avery Brewing in the late afternoon, early evening. So love to see folks stop into that. Looks like we've got another question here, Molly.
Oh, the Longmont question about in person.
Yeah. So if you want to.
Sure. Yeah. So someone's asking a question about, is there any reason an in-person ballot would not be counted if it passed through all the steps at a polling place? So at a high level, if someone goes to a vote center to cast a ballot in person, they will be required to provide ID to that election judge, and they will be offered an in-person ballot that they will vote, and then they will turn it in to the election officials via the box at the vote center, and then that box is securely transported back to our office by bipartisan teams of election judges. And because identity has already been verified at the polling place, that ballot would actually go straight to our scan room. It wouldn't need to go through those additional steps that we talked about earlier. So if the person provided acceptable form of ID, then it would be processed right away when it is returned back to our office.
Okay, another question. It's a candidate that has a district that covers Weld and Boulder, asking about deadlines. The short answer is the state deadlines are the same. They might be meeting with their Canvas board a different day than us. So that's something you'd want to check with Weld. So the Weld side results might be certified a different day. So we always like to tell people in general, the election's not over till the week of Thanksgiving. So they might be doing it Monday, but Molly, you might have more insight, but I don't think they could do it any earlier than Monday, just because with all the, after the audit, then all the work then gets finished up on all the final reports that the Canvas board needs to receive. So I don't think there's a lot of time.
I think that's right, Marcella.
So yeah, check with Weld to find out when they're finalizing this result. Okay, and let's see here. Anything? All right, we'll give it about 30 more seconds for anyone else to drop in. Any additional questions? And if you have follow-up questions, you can always send them to me. And if I can't answer them, I'll follow them to Molly or Stephanie, our elections director. Okay, great. We'll hope to see some folks on a tour tomorrow's Vote Early Day events. Thank you,
Thanks, everyone.